nicotine is known as an appetite suppressant, and there are studies that show that the breast milk of those who smoke tastes different than the breast milk of those who don't smoke. It has a taste of nicotine in the breast milk itself. So babies who breastfeed and smoke, they often do show more fussiness at the breast and sometimes breast refusal, especially if the feeding parent has recently had a cigarette.
Before we begin, I want to share something special with all of you expecting parents out there. As an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, I've seen firsthand how a little planning can go a long way to helping you achieve your baby feeding goals. That's why I'm offering you my free ebook. It's called Birth Practices to Support Breastfeeding, and it's a workbook. So check out the link in the description below.
Hello, and welcome back to Lo's Lactation Lab. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh. I'm an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, or an IBCLC. I'm a birth doula. I'm a childbirth educator. And I am all about combining both science-backed, evidence-based information with compassionate care so that you can make the decisions that feel right for your family, given your unique individual situation. I want to answer a question that I see frequently asked, both in Google searches, on social media: smoking and breastfeeding. Is it safe for your baby? A parent messaged me last week and said, and I would love to breastfeed my baby, but I also want to do what's best for them. And I don't know if switching to formula is going to be better than continuing to smoke while feeding my baby my milk from my body. So let's explore the risks, the realities, and what the recommendations are for when a person is smoking and breastfeeding. Let's talk about the facts. There was a national household survey that was done quite a few years ago, so this number may be a little bit different now, but about 23% of women in the childbearing years, that's ages 14 to 39, are regular smokers, and nearly a third of those smoke between 11 and 20 cigarettes per day. So if you are somebody who is trying to decide what to do, whether you are already pregnant or trying to get pregnant, I want you to know you are not alone. And then there are about 7% of people, of women who answered this question, who are occasional smokers. I am here to tell you, just take the shame away and find the facts when it comes to what is healthiest for your baby. We all know what the absolute healthiest is. The absolute healthiest is to stop smoking, but that's not always possible. And it does not make you any better or worse of a parent. And being able to cease smoking or any other unhealthy habit for that matter does not put you in a good or bad mom category. So what are the facts? First of all, let's talk about what the transfer into breast milk is. So nicotine is rapidly and completely absorbed into the mother's bloodstream. Now, we've talked about half-life before in other episodes, but briefly, it's the amount of time that it takes a substance in the bloodstream to reach half of its initial amount. So for nicotine, that's about 97 minutes. Nicotine is absorbed more slowly and less efficiently from breast milk. Infants absorb nicotine and about 2,000 or so other byproducts of cigarettes readily from the air. That's that secondhand and third-hand smoking that we are familiar with. So if you don't know those terms, firsthand is obviously inhaling the substance itself. Secondhand is being around it, being able to smell it and absorb it into your bloodstream just from the smell. And then third hand smoke is maybe you're not around the smoke, but you are around a smoker who has that substance on their clothing, in their hair, in their car. And so infants do absorb nicotine through second and third hand smoke. So what are the effects of smoking on lactation itself? The first thing I want to say about this is that correlation does not necessarily mean causation, but anytime we see repeated and strong correlations, it's something to look at. So we know that smoking has been linked to earlier weaning, and the heaviest smokers tend to wean the earliest. It also leads to lower milk production, and this is because nicotine inhibits the release of the hormone prolactin, which is critical for milk creation, milk synthesis. So it also interferes with the ability to release milk, which means that smoking has been linked to milk production and letdown problems, but there are some researchers that suggest that this is due not specifically to smoking, but to poor lactation management. So one of the best things that you can do is meet with an IBCLC prenatally and come up with your lactation plan and have your go-to person who you are going to call in for help the moment you start doubting your milk supply, the moment you start wondering if your baby is getting enough, the moment you get recommended to supplement with something else. Now, let's talk about how does smoking affect the baby. Nicotine is known as an appetite suppressant, and there are studies that show that the breast milk of those who smoke tastes different than the breast milk of those who don't smoke. It has a taste of nicotine in the breast milk itself. So babies who breastfeed and smoke, they often do show more fussiness at the breast and sometimes breast refusal, especially if the feeding parent has recently had a cigarette. Babies who are bottle fed in households where smoking occurs are more frequently hospitalized, and they have much higher risk of respiratory and gastrointestinal illness. And colic is more common in this group as well. But the most significant effect of cigarette smoke in the household is the greatly increased risk of SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome. We know that babies of smoking mothers and fathers have a 7 times greater chance of dying from SIDS than those babies who are in a smoke-free home, especially in parents who have more than 5 cigarettes in a day. Regularly, we see some symptoms of vomiting, nauseousness, gastrointestinal difficulties in that infant. The American Academy of Pediatrics on their website says that smoking is contraindicated for breastfeeding. But that is not what the worldwide research tells us. The worldwide research tells us that, in fact, managing the environment of the infant in a household where the feeding parent is a smoker or where any parent is a smoker, and offering breast milk, even direct body feeding, has better long-term outcomes for the infant than the cessation of breastfeeding and switching to formula. But this means that you need to manage smoking while breastfeeding. And there are ways to do this. Obviously, the ideal, like I mentioned already, is to just stop smoking altogether. If you can't do that, you can cut down. So we all know that the less you smoke, the smaller the chance that difficulties will arise. And the risk increases if you smoke more than 20 cigarettes a day. So even just trying to get below that number, if you're a heavy smoker, is going to be helpful. And then the big thing is to try to eliminate that second and third hand exposure. So the way that you do this, never smoke around your baby. Never allow other people to smoke around your baby. Smoke outside. Try to keep the smoke away from any area where the baby spends a lot of time. Cover your hair. So have a hat or a scarf that you use that is just for when you smoke, and then take it off when you go in and you feed your baby. Wear a coat, wear something over a smock, something over your clothing so that when you go back in to be with your baby, that smoke is not lingering on your clothing. Making sure you're washing your hands regularly, even washing your face or any exposed skin, or using a wipe to get that third hand exposure off. And then consider the half-life. So wait as long as possible between smoking and nursing. We know that half-life is about 95 minutes. So feeding your baby first, then going out to smoke, and then hopefully your baby won't cue for another 2 to 3 hours. And by that time, you can feed again. And then if you need to smoke again, you can do that. So those are the ways that you can continue to breastfeed your baby and provide all of those amazing antibodies and that perfect blend of macro and micronutrients that are specific for your baby, even if you cannot give up the habit of smoking currently. Now, some people do ask about nicotine replacement therapy and breastfeeding. The first thing to know is that nicotine replacement therapy products are not licensed to be used by breastfeeding mothers. However, we do know that babies will be exposed to less nicotine through things like the patches or gum, and that number is significantly less. It also avoids exposure to other chemical compounds found in tobacco smoke, and you're limiting the amount of toxic chemicals that baby will ingest. You should never use these products and continue to smoke. So you have to choose one or the other. We do know that patches applied over a 24-hour period may produce really vivid dreams in the person wearing the patch. And so you may want to remove the patch overnight so that the baby is exposed less during those nighttime feeds. If you are going to use gum, it should be chewed immediately after feeds in order, again, to reduce the exposure, to give yourself time to reach that half-life. And also any nasal sprays that you're using, similarly, they produce rapidly high levels initially. So go ahead and feed the baby, use the nasal spray, and then try to wait until you reach that half-life of about an hour and a half to 2 hours before you feed the baby again. But we do know that exposure of the baby to these products is safer than exposure to cigarettes because of this factor of having that second and third hand smoke. So I would love to know what your experience with breastfeeding and nicotine is. So reach out to me on my TikTok, on my Instagram, on my Facebook page. I would love to hear not only what your experience was, but what the advice that was given to you by either pediatricians or your OBGYN or an IBCLC or any other medical professional. If you have any questions about smoking or any other question that is on your mind in regards to feeding your baby, please don't hesitate to reach out to me so that we can get you booked for a telehealth consultation. I love getting to meet with you and answering your questions and helping you feel really good about where you are in your baby feeding journey.